Now let me show you how to group items in a list view. For example, here I've grouped the contacts based on their first letter. So currently we have two groups, M and J. And in iOS, we also have this index on the right side, which is pretty handy when going through a list with a lot of items. So if I tap J here, and we have a long list with a lot of items, I can jump straight to the J group. Now in real-world applications, instead of just displaying M and J, we often display all the letters of the alphabet from A to Z. But in this video, to save your time, I'm just going to stick to M and J. So let's see how we can group items in the list view. First, I'm going to add a new class to our models folder. So add new file, and I'm going to call this contact group. I want this class to derive from list of contact. So it's a list by nature. Now let's resolve the namespace here. Next, I'm going to define a couple of properties. One is title, and the other is short title. This short title will be used to render this index on iOS, but it has no effect on Android or Windows at the time of recording this video. Now I'm going to initialize these properties via the constructor. So title and short title. Title is title, and short title is short title. Pretty basic, right? Now back in the code behind for our XAML file, instead of setting item source to a list of contacts, I want to set it to a list of contact groups. So a list of contact group. Now here we need to initialize this list with contact group objects, not contacts. So new contact group. In the constructor, we need to supply a title and a short title. I'm going to use M for both of them. Now, because this contact group is a list of contacts, I can initialize it with contact objects here. So I'm going to cut this contact here and then put it here. So we have a contact group called M, and inside this contact, we have one contact with the name Mosh. Similarly, I'm going to create another contact group. This one is going to be J and J. And inside this contact group, we're going to have John. Okay? Now, you don't necessarily have to use single letters as your group titles. For example, in your application, you might have groups like friends, family, colleagues, acquaintances, and so on. But in this app, because I'm grouping contacts by the first letter of their name, I'm using a single letter as the group title. And the last step. In our XAML file, we need to set a couple of properties in our list view. And by the way, I've simplified this list so we don't have the custom cell that I defined in the last lecture. Instead, we're using a built-in text cell. And this is purely to get rid of extra noise. So for the list view, I'm going to set a couple of properties. One is grouping enabled? First, we need to set this to true. The other property I'm going to set is group display binding. And I'm going to set this to a binding expression. What should be the title of each group? That's the property I want to display here. In this case, I want to bind this to the title property of contact group. So binding to title. Now, if you want to render this index panel in iOS, you should set another property here, which is group short name binding. Again, we use a binding expression. So binding to what property? Short title. That's all we have to do. Let's look at the result. And here's our grouped contacts. Next, I'm going to show you how to work with selections.